Namaste, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste, good evening, and a warm welcome to all the participants and viewers for the 10th event of Vikasana NEP 2020 Vision to Action, a national webinar series on National Education Policy 2020 organized by Disha Bharat. I am Lavanya, a full-time coordinator at Disha Bharat. Disha Bharat has been relentlessly working in the field of value education since 2005. As Swami Vivekananda says, education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. As educators, it becomes our responsibility to bring out the full potential that is in our students. For this, Disha Bharat has designed faculty enrichment programs highlighting the importance of the role of teacher in man making and nation building. As we all know, National Education Policy 2020 is a visionary, game-changing policy. The state of Karnataka has decided to implement this policy from the academic year starting October 2021. One of the very important facets of this policy is the thrust given to sustainable development. Implementation of choice-based credit system, which inherently is interdisciplinary in nature, is one of the steps towards achieving this sustainable development that we are talking about. To address us on this very important and interesting subject, we have with us Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan. I request Dr. Bhavani MR, Principal of Surana College, Bangalore, and a well-wisher of Disha Bharat to introduce the speaker to us. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lavanya. Namaste, everybody. A very good afternoon to the distinguished teachers of higher education. On behalf of Disha Bharat and Bangalore University, I extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan ji. Namaste, sir, and a hearty welcome to you. I welcome each of you to the 10th event focusing on the NEP 2020 towards sustainable development. Today's topic is choice-based credit system, CBCS, towards interdisciplinary learning. CBCS is not new to us. It has been mandated for all universities, and accordingly, every student should have the right to choose subjects that he believes he is interested in. Our experience till now, however, is that we offer a restricted a la carte menu that thrust upon a student the subjects or courses that we believe is right for them. NEP is definitely a true game changer and is bound to foster interdisciplinary education. Without any further delay, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan ji to all of you this afternoon. Sir is a very, very renowned figure, and I'm sure everybody knows him very well for the kind of work that he has done so far for the education. However, it is my duty to bring forth a few of his thoughts here. Dr. Bhushan ji is a national research professor designated by the Ministry of Ayush, Government of India, at Interdisciplinary School of Health Sciences, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. He is also the former Vice Chairman of University Grants Commission, Fellow, National Academy of Sciences and National Academy of Medical Sciences, India. Dr. Bhushan has over 40 years of experience in research and development in the area of evidence-based Ayurveda, ethnopharmacology, drug discovery and development, and integrative medicine. He is a fellow of National Academy of Sciences, India, National Academy of Medical Sciences, India, and a visiting professor at the IIAS, Shimla. He has worked on boards of several universities and a member of important national committees of the UGC, CSIR, DST, DBT, ICMR, FSSAI, and Ministry of Ayush. He has worked on committees of Niti Aayog, National Knowledge Commission, and Planning Commission. He was also invited as temporary consultant to the WHO Geneva. He is a recipient of many awards and orations, including Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Award, Sir Ramnath Chopra Oration, Waldemar Haffkine Oration, Dr. C. Dwarkanath Oration, Dr. P.K. Devi Oration, KLE University Oration, and Prince V.K. Jog Best Teacher Award. He has delivered invited lectures at several national and international bodies, including ACS, ACR, UCLA, UIC, Johns Hopkins, INSA, IPS, IPC, among many others. He has authored many books and chapters with reputed publishers, including Elsevier, Academic Press, and Wiley. His recent scholarly book named Integrative Approaches for Health, published by Academic Press Elsevier, has received excellent reviews. He has guided over 20 PhD students and has 8 Indian patents, 2 US patents to his credit, and has over 175 research publications with over 10,200 citations. It is such an honor to introduce you to this august gathering and hear from you, sir. From all of us at Disha Bharat, a warm welcome to you once again. The platform is yours.
Namaskar. Dhanyawad, Bhavani ji, for that kind introduction. All those who are part of this Disha Bharat initiative, Rekha ji, Bhavana ji, Lavanya ji, and several others, I was very impressed with the name itself, Disha Bharat, because Bharat ये नाम हम लोग बहुत ही कम यूज करते हैं, मुझे लगता है, और उसके बारे में मैं बाद में थोड़ी बात भी करूंगा। लेकिन आज दूसरी चीज मुझे ऐसी दिखाई दी कि यहाँ पे जो स्त्री शक्ति है उसका मुझे अनुभव हुआ। आपके अभी तक जो भी सब स्क्रीन पे आए हैं उन्होंने स्त्री शक्ति का एक अनुभव दिया है, और मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ कि विश्व में अगर पूरी तरह से हमें उन्नति करनी है तो ये शक्ति को अगर हम आदर नहीं करते, उसका पूरा उनको सहयोग नहीं देते हैं, तो ये पूरा अधूरा रहेगा। क्योंकि मैं एक जीव वैज्ञानिक हूँ, विद्यार्थी हूँ जीव शास्त्र का, तो मुझे मालूम है, मैं जब भी क्रोमोसोम की तरफ देखता हूँ तो आपको पता है एक्स और वाई क्रोमोसोम रहते हैं। एक्स क्रोमोसोम विमेन के है और वाई क्रोमोसोम पुरुष में रहते हैं। एक्स, अब एक्स का साइज अगर देख लीजिए ना, तो उसके सामने जो वाई क्रोमोसोम है ना, तो इतना छोटा लगता है, इतना छोटा, इतना। तो इतनी सारी क्षमताएं ये विमेन पावर में है, जिसको हम लोगों में काफी सालों से दबा के रखा हुआ है। और इसीलिए मुझे आज बहुत अच्छा लगा जिस तरह से सभी विमेन वॉलंटियर ने ये कंडक्ट किया, तो इसका जिक्र मैंने सोचा करना ठीक रहेगा। तो सरस्वती को वंदन करते हुए आज मैं आपके साथ बात करने की कोशिश करूंगा। हिंदी और इंग्लिश ऐसा दोनों करूंगा। मेरा हिंदी इतना ठीक नहीं है, फिर भी दिल्ली में 2 साल के बाद रहने के बाद में थोड़ा ठीक हो गया है, लेकिन बम्बई पूना का हिंदी थोड़ा अलग रहता है। लेकिन आपको तो सभी बेंगलोर में है, तो मेरा हिंदी आपको ठीक लगेगा, मुझे लगता है। तो आपने जो ये थीम किया है, नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी 2020 फ्रॉम विजन टू एक्शन, ये ओवरआर्चिंग थीम है, उसमें आपने टुवर्ड्स सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट ये फोकस दिया है। ये भी मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा, क्योंकि सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट की बातें सभी जगह पे होती है, और हाल ही में आपने देखा रहेगा यूनेस्को ने भी काफी सारा इस विषय में किया। यूनेस्को का जो मिशन है, वो ये साल के कोविड के पीरियड में उन्होंने एक थीम बनाई, फ्रॉम डिसरप्शन टू रिकवरी, ऐसी। और कोविड पीरियड में एजुकेशन में क्या क्या चैलेंजेस आ गए, उसके ऊपर उन्होंने काफी उसके बारे में चर्चा भी की है। आज जो मैं बोलने जा रहा हूँ, जो विषय मुझे दिया है, वो है एक्चुअली चॉइस बेस्ड क्रेडिट सिस्टम का। लेकिन चॉइस बेस्ड क्रेडिट सिस्टम को समझने के लिए और टुवर्ड्स इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी लर्निंग हम जिसको बोलते हैं, उसके पास जाने के पहले मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ कि हमें शिक्षा के बारे में कुछ मूलभूत चर्चा करना आवश्यक है। शिक्षा का मूलभूत प्रयास क्या है, हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव्स क्या है, पर्पस क्या है। तो पर्पस ऑफ एजुकेशन जो एनईपी ने एलेबोरेट किया है, इट स्टेट्स, एंड आई कोट फ्रॉम एनईपी, एजुकेशन मस्ट डेवलप not only cognitive capacities, both the foundational capacities and literacy numeracy of higher order cognitive capacities such as critical thinking and problem solving, but also social, ethical, and emotional capacities and dispositions, unquote. NEP also recommends certain means we should adopt to achieve these goals, And pedagogy, it believes that it must evolve to make education more experiential, holistic, integrated, inquiry-driven, quality-oriented, learner-centered, and here that CBSE will come later, learner-centered, because this kind of a focus of learner-centric approach has come probably for the first time in our policies. It should be discussion-based, flexible, and of course enjoyable. So if you see all these keywords which I talked about, you will see that almost all and many more than them were already there in our own pedagogy, what we call it as ancient pedagogy, which used to be there at one point when Nalanda, Takshashila, Vikramshila were there as world-class universities. But over a period of time, we lost shine, and there are several reasons which I will try to touch upon as I progress. Again, Disha team, I am happy that you have given sufficient time. Because otherwise, normally what happens is, you invite so many speakers and there are 10, 15 minutes and then one speaker takes more time, other speaker gets, and so you are taking one speaker at a time and you're keeping good question answer time as well. So this also I liked, while I talk, I have a habit of going back and forth. So please pardon me for that. In between, I thought of mentioning about Disha as well. In addition to the purpose of education described by NEP, I also feel that one more purpose, which NEP has not touched directly, they have of course indirectly talked about it, I feel is enlightenment and empowerment. They also should be considered as important goals of education, because enlightenment can help to create thinking and sensitive citizens of the society, which is extremely important. And empowerment may provide means to educated individual to earn living, because that is also important. As well as that person who is educated should contribute to economy and overall development of the nation and the humanity. This is equally important when we talk about education. In India, or rather I would like to call it as in Bharat, the aspect of empowerment has overpowered the issue of enlightenment. The purpose of education, we may view the ultimate purpose of education from preschool to doctoral program as its multidimensional fitness and well-being of the individual, society, nation, humanity, and overall the planet. And that's why the sustainability or sustainable development comes in picture. To accomplish this purpose, we need a radical new form of education that paves the way to succeeding generations to achieve what we have dreamt about. What kind of flagship education will guide our young people, to travel, to help them travel in the right direction? What will happen or what will help them to make Bharat not only as a global hub of research and knowledge, intelligence or innovation, but also it becomes a world leader, Vishwaguru. Our Prime Minister talks about Vishwaguru to help humanity overcome its problems, inequity, absence of safety, hunger, poverty, intolerance, hatred, cruelty, greed, and transmuting our nation truly into a global leader. That's what will be the true Vishwaguru. And education has a major role to play in this. The vision, if we talk about a vibrant higher education system grounded in integrated foundation of modern culture and ancient Indian culture, both, modern culture on one side and ancient Bharatiya culture or Bharatiya Vichardhara on other side, that empower learners for a better pragmatic, economic, socio-emotional and intellectual ethical future of themselves, and then our country, and then the global good, in harmony with sustainable development goals by embracing cutting-edge technology. So this should be our broad vision. When we talk about education in Bharat, we should not restrict only to temporary gains. What in corporate language they talk about low-hanging fruits. this corporate attitude in education is making education too myopic, and I'm really worried about it. We are in education and not in car manufacturing business, where assembly line production is technique is used for manufacturing cars. We are not such a mission to create robots. We are nurturing minds, young minds, and that's why education should have a much broader agenda. We need to clearly articulate the goal of education for each of our education program, be it primary, secondary, or higher education, including undergraduate, graduate, or doctoral, in a seamless manner, and we should cut down the silos, and we should also bridge the gap between so-called white collar and blue collar. So we are keeping skill on one side, education on one side. Fortunately, now during the new reshuffle, skill and education are now under one umbrella, and this is a very good progressive step that the government has taken. Because Shrama Pratishtha, and Shrama Pratishtha is not something what Gandhiji talked about. Shrama Pratishtha has been in our parampara right from the beginning. And I'll touch upon that again little later. But we need to translate what I talked about, some of these goals and objectives or purpose of education, in correct curricula, which includes syllabus, teaching learning materials, classroom pedagogy is appropriately adopted, and the proper assessment, and then supporting education policies. Now we have a great policy, but policy will be good as how it is implemented. And personally, I'm really concerned about the vast delay that has happened in implementing this excellent policy. And I'm happy, and I must congratulate Karnataka state, for deciding that without waiting for formal approvals at a government level, whatever is implementable, the government will proceed further to implement NEP 2020. Excellent initiative. The education policy 2020 to me is a great hope to move in the direction of necessary reforms and transformation. NEP 2020 envisions an education system deeply rooted in Indian or Bharatiya ethos, Bharatiya Vichardhara, that contributes directly to transforming India that has not evolved as Bharat. I will repeat this again. India that has not evolved as Bharat. And sustainability into equitable and vibrant knowledge society. That's what our aim should be. The policy envisages to develop among the students to a deep sense of respect toward fundamental duties and constitutional values, deep-rooted pride in our own history, our own culture, its spirit, intellect and deeds, as long as we develop knowledge, skills, values, and dispositions that support sustainable development as a truly global citizens. So broadly, NEP 2020 has two types of recommendation. The first one includes principles of social justice, such as it talks about access and equity, employability, And the second one relates to quality of education. While I was at UGC, I was spearheading quality mandate of the UGC, which talks about improving quality of education at various levels. I'm not going to talk more about it today, but those who are interested, UGC has published a book on quality mandate, which is available freely for free download at the UGC website. You should have a look at it. In the beginning, I think Lavanya ji mentioned about Swami Vivekananda, and she rightly quoted him also. And I think that that kind of a vision of education which Swami Vivekananda has given us, and the same thing was reiterated by many others, even before him and after him. So it's not the single, education is the single most important instrument for social and economic transformation. And he used to say that find the teacher, serve him the child, open your heart and see the God will manifest it. So this is what is the value of education and value of teacher. Having said this, now let me come to the elements of education objectives. We talked about education objectives and goals, but what are the elements of education objectives? I would divide these elements into 4 baskets. The first and important one is obviously academic. The academic elements include intellectual strength, general knowledge, scientific temper, self-reliance, interdisciplinary exposure, aptitude, independent thinking capability, reasoning ability, habit of learning, how to learn also is very important, And in these days, not only how to learn, but how to unlearn and how to relearn is also becoming extremely important. The second component of this is moral and spiritual values, because just academics is not enough. Unless you have emotional maturity, you have ethical values, simple living, selfless service, humility, truthfulness, dignity of labor, what Mahatma Gandhi used to call as Shrama Pratishtha, and moral character, high moral character, value system. These are all deeply embedded in our own Bharatiya Vichardhara. So this is not something which we have to look to West to know about it. But this is somehow missing in our own mainstream education. Our education is becoming again too much mechanical and myopic, leaving aside all these other important and crucial elements. So after moral and spiritual values, the third important element, I would say that it is social sensitivity. And why I'm saying social sensitivity? Because as an educated person, I must be sensitive to what is happening around me. The national culture and heritage, tolerance for diversity, national integration, understanding the rural life, the classless and casteless society, the political system, economic system, social forces and needs, civic sense, respect for rights, duties, and of course, discharging our own obligations, not just talking about rights, but our duties and discharging our obligations as well, and high moral character. Now, once after all these 3 are sufficiently addressed, one element cuts across all these 3, and that is quality of education. Whether it is academic education, whatever you offer, it has to be of a good quality. Well, if you ask me what are the attributes of educatedness or an educated person, I will not say just degree holder makes you an educated person. Degree holder may have some completed some curriculum in the college and may have got a degree, but that necessarily does not make that person or get attributes of educatedness within that person. And which are they? I think independent learning, reading and communication, informal understanding of whatever is happening around and responding to those changes responsibly, information and understanding that information, intellectual capacities, critical thinking, inquiry, integration, socio-economic and emotional components, attributes and habits of mind, citizenry, and beauty and aesthetics appreciation. This is also extremely important, understanding the aesthetics and respect to beauty, appreciation. Many times educated persons don't find them, for example, engineers, and I know that many engineers are extremely creative, also, but somehow in our education system, we have a very big influence or dominance of STEM, STEMs, science, technology, and mathematics and engineering, these disciplines, which are actually the left brain function. But in doing so, unfortunately, we are creating large number of students with right brain shrinked. And right brain is equally important, you know. The humanities, arts, social sciences, these are equally important disciplines, but somehow in our country, we have not given them sufficient opportunities. Even if you look at funding, what is given, huge amount of funding is given to STEM, as against very, very less amount of funding is available for humanities and social sciences. So while I was there at UGC, we created a new scheme called STRIDE. And STRIDE was focused on high impact research in humanities and social sciences. You know? So all these components are important, and both left and right brain development is important. You know, the purpose and ethos of education, you know, intelligence and well-being oriented liberal education on one side. I'll repeat again, intelligence and well-being oriented liberal education on one side, and other side, economy-oriented formal education. The economic advancement of individual, corporates, and nation is also important. You know? Future nourishing of leaders, economy, nation, global good. The liberal education is not simply to prepare one's first job. Liberal education, which NEP emphasizes, also is for second job, for third job, and beyond. Because liberal education is not creating you, or you meaning any individual, for one specific job. They will definitely empower for one specific job. But the capabilities which education will create in an individual, that individual will be able to adapt very easily to face changes in job market and grab future jobs. The current approach, which is focused on campus placement based, salary package driven education culture, I feel that it could be detrimental to basic ethos of education, and we need to have a relook at it. And there are excellent pointers to change them in the new education policy. Now I'll come to the Disha Bharat's Bharat term. You know, India that is Bharat in Constitution. You know, they say that India that is Bharat shall be the union of states. Now I think that this, I don't know how this narrative was created, because I did some reading, you know, I tried to see what was behind. I could not find anything convincing. I have not yet seen, and if you know some country, you please tell me, but probably India is the only country which has these two names. Why India? The moment we talk about India, I feel it is biased and narrow narrative about the idea of India, which was born in 1947. And therefore, I revere Gandhiji, you know, from my heart. I practice his principles, his philosophies, you know, as phenomenal. You know, he is a great hero of centuries. There is no doubt about it. But I don't think that makes him father of nation. And I'm sure Gandhiji also might not have agreed for that from his heart. Because once you say father of this nation, that means the nation was born. Well, were we born in 1947? We need to relook in all these questions very, very critically, and we have to get out of these false narratives which are being created and forced on our minds. You know, the dominance of English was so powerful that many educational institutes, after even independence, established through nationalist movements, had to fall in the line with British model. And even today, majority of them are continuing with the Macaulayan model, because Macaulay's diary, you know, or his minutes are so sharp and so powerful and so intelligent. We must appreciate intelligence of that man also. You know, he realized at that time that once you destroy these people's culture through education, ruling them will be very easy. But even after independence, we have not woken up enough. The primary objective of university education shifted from scholarship, knowledge generation, and innovation to assembly line production of graduates who could serve in colonial establishments more as a bandwagon of clerks and babus, because that's why East India Company wanted graduates to serve them. You know? The transition which we saw during this colonial period from Gurukula tradition. At that time, our education system was so rich that from all over the world, students used to come to India to learn the Gurukula tradition, you know. But we converted that into Kulaguru tradition and Vice Chancellor dominated system, which was given by the British leaders, you know. this was consisting in essentially this transition from Gurukula to Kulaguru system. And I must tell you that both have strengths and weaknesses, which I will touch upon little later. But we need to really liberate from this monocultural dominance. We are currently also facing this monocultural dominance. The inspiration for modernity cannot be imported from the West, but it will have to be derived from the evolving our own traditions. The 21st century dominated by the information knowledge-driven global society. I can see that disciplines like philosophy, history, archaeology, linguistics, fine arts are slowly getting out of this monocultural dominance, which is a good sign. It is important to keep an inquisitive, open mind to welcome new ideas, and our quest to add new knowledge must continue. Whether it is Pluto, Galileo, Hippocrates, Newton, Archimedes, Darwin, all these we have studied, in our schools. In my school, I've studied many of these. If you ask me in my school, the syllabus was such that in our history class, I can tell you all the Mughal emperors, names and years, because marks used to be there for them, or viceroy, names of them. I can tell you even today, but I don't know who were the dynasties in Bharat. Maybe we have heard about Maurya and Chalukya or some more, but I was not knowing the Varma dynasty in Kerala, and Raja Varma, if he would not have fought, instead of becoming English-speaking country, we would have become Portuguese-speaking country, or Dutch-speaking country, or that Veer Munda, who fought and therefore the whole Northeast area was protected. So these heroes, we have never taught them in our own education system. We have not taught them. I have not learned Panini or Charaka or Sushruta, Kautilya, Aryabhatta, Varamira, Nagarjuna, Bhaskaracharya in my school. I had to learn them from outside. My grandfather may have told me about Charaka and Sushruta, or my other senior members may have told me about Kautilya, Aryabhatta, but it was not part of school, or even if it was part of my school curriculum, it was very, very negligible, and not given that much of attention. So this we must change. While I'm saying so, I'm a student of science, so I must mention this. Otherwise, what I'm saying may be taken in a wrong perspective. I must tell you that while we should be proud of our own culture, we should not become dogmatic by taking the stand that we know everything. We must avoid the self-pride and past glory syndrome. I will repeat this. We must avoid self-pride and past glory syndrome. And our minds must be open for new knowledge which is coming up, the science and technology which we are witnessing. There is no shortcut to this. But at the same time, while doing so, even today, when I learn something in my own mother tongue, I understand it much better. When I read in my mother tongue, which is Marathi, even today, including newspaper article also, if I read in Marathi, I connect it with better than in English. So education in mother tongue, which NEP has emphasized, is phenomenal. It is extremely important. And in Kannada, if students can learn their understanding to the language, and so the culture will be much better than learning in monolingual. We are facing a monolingual domination, like monocultural domination. Promoting regional languages, I feel, is extremely important. And I must thank Dr. Kasturi Rangan, the NEP. Kasturi Rangan is also my mentor. We have been interacting with each other, and today also I continue to interact and learn from him. The NEP 2020, that shape which was given by Dr. Kasturi Rangan committee, and many people have contributed from your own Bangalore city. My friend Professor Sridhar, he has contributed phenomenally well in shaping this quality. By the way, I was also in Bangalore for some time, and during that time I was part of the Karnataka Knowledge Commission as well as Karnataka Innovation Council. So I have seen how effectively Karnataka community, gets connected and passionately get engaged in doing something different for our country and for people. Now I will really talk about the ancient university system. I will not deliberate more on that, but I could not resist, mentioning this because before there were formal universities anywhere in the world. Today there are Harvards and MIT and such great universities, or Bologna in different places. But the first typical multidisciplinary universities were only in Bharat. Be it Takshashila, Nalanda, Vikramshila, Mithila, or Vallabhi, Pushpagiri, so many. They were unfortunately destroyed, and I feel so bad that the Nalanda University, the railway station, I am told that it is still named by a person who actually destroyed Nalanda University. So bad. That when we see relics of these great universities, we could feel that what those scholars, Pandits, must have faced during that time. And Sanskrit language, which carried forward the knowledge and this legacy for so many period, I must compliment all those Pandits and Shastris who preserved this knowledge during all these difficult times. Otherwise, it would have got destroyed, like they destroyed books, but they could not destroy people, what they kept in their minds. Over 15 ancient universities existed from period of 6th century to 1200 BC. This history also, I must tell you, that this history also is not correct. When I say Charaka was, say, 400 BC or something like that, or Panini or Kautilya, these periods what we are taught, I feel are not correct. There is huge gap, and they have reconciled those to suit somebody else's agenda, and we must rediscover. I am told, that the new archaeological evidences which are coming, which are showing actual scientific evidences of existence of our culture for more than 20,000 years, not small period, not just 2,000 years. So this, and there are still more mysteries to unravel, because so many things have been destroyed, vitiated. It is going to take some time for scientists also. But my appeal to Indian scientists or Bharatiya Vaigyanik, to look in our own systems very, very carefully and to try to revitalize them. I work in the area of Ayurveda. I am a biochemist, but my research is on Ayurveda. And I can tell you that Ayurveda and yoga like sciences have so much of knowledge power that they can actually give new directions for the modern science and modern biology. Today, many things are not known in biology, which could be resolved these mysteries could be resolved if we go back to understand what are the basic concepts of Ayurveda and yoga. And same is true with several other disciplines. Today that is not the subject of talking, so I will not deliberate upon that more. But this is something which needs to be addressed. Our own history needs to be corrected. And while at UGC, we did reform several curriculum. We call it as the learning outcome-based curriculum, and the learning outcome-based curriculum for history also has been prepared, and you will see that in the new curriculum of this history, you will see a due prominence for Bharatiya Itihas also has been given, and in the whole process, our earlier universities, like Nalanda and Takshashila, where knowledge and skills were going together. The name was Vidya and Kala. Chauda Vidya and Chausasht Kala used to be taught on the campus. And these are sources of new ideas for education, research, and innovation. 14 Vidya and 64 Kala. 14 Vidya, when you talk about the 6 darshanas, whether Sankhya and Yoga, Nyaya and Vaisheshika, Vedanta, whether Purva and Uttar Mimamsa, the Charvaka, in our culture, even those who are opposing are also respected. Those who don't believe in God are also respected. Charvaka, therefore, Charvaka is equally respected, like Vedanta also. Jaina philosophy, Buddha philosophy, they're equally respected as part of Shat Darshanas. The 4 Vedas or 4 Upavedas or Vedangas. And I was amazed to see the names of 64 Kala. Amazing. Many of these Kalas may not have been in existence today. I can tell you, it's very difficult to find experts in these Kalas even today. But my request to even Disha Bharat, please try to identify those people who are carrying these Kalas with them, and let's treat them as precious treasure of our country. For example, say Ramal. Now, Ramal Vidya. Now, how many people can talk authentically about Ramal Vidya? And several such. I just gave you one example. So we must revitalize all these 64 Kala as part of skills, today, the education and skill, as I mentioned, are again coming together, and I hope that Bharatiya component of that, will also be retained and strengthened. I talked about Gurukul and Kulaguru system. The Gurukula system, if you look at it, it was basically based on the Guru Shishya Parampara or master-disciple relationship. It used to be spontaneous, life-oriented learning. And learning by doing. You look at the way in which Upanishads have evolved, question and answer. And learning from Shishya also was one of the part. I can tell you from my own experience, even today, I learn from my students. And I think in today's system, we have completely undermined the intelligence, capabilities, aspirations of our students. I will touch upon that point a little later. But learning by doing, asking questions, Nachiketa did not hesitate to ask even his father, challenge his own father, or even Yama for that matter. Yama, baby, now Yama, if I have a question, I am free. This inquisitiveness in our current system, we are killing that inquisitiveness, and we are giving them a spoon feeding kind of a thing in which the creativity is greatly compromised. There used to be philosophy lineage during Gurukul. Gurukul Parampara, this person is coming from this Guru means that lineage, people know what it is. It used to be Shastra-based Adhyayana. It also was including the ethical components, compassion, yogic calmness. Shishyas were performing yoga also in the ashram, the curiosity and creativity. So all these were components of Gurukula. Now in Kulaguru, what has happened, Kulaguru system or Vaishankar system or current system, it has become teacher-student requisite. What is required, that much teacher can give it to the student. Student will get only what is required. So this is requisite based. It has become a structured teaching because you have a syllabus, structured syllabus, So it became a rote learning, memory based and uniform, not customized or not personalized. It is uniform, irrespective of students' capacity, capability, and interest. You are giving the same thing. My mass education, like I said, that assembly line production, but it also gave excellent technical expertise. We must admit that. It also gave us very good science-based teaching. The professional excellence which this new system gave, we should not undermine that. The commercial success, key motivation, the competitive stress also, which was important, in making student learn something, and so many other. But in general, I feel that we should take best components from both the systems, and future education should evolve by combining best out of Gurukula and Kulaguru system. And what are these? For example, university education. We talk about education and we talk about teaching. Now look at this. Teaching means teaching is always structured, serious, passive, forceful. We have to make compulsion that unless you have 75% of the attendance, your term will not be granted. I think it is a failure of our education system. Students should attend because teachers are teaching which they like and not by force. Today's teaching is also unidirectional. It is monologue. Teacher thinks, I am a teacher, but I must accept that teachers have they have thought that teaching is my monopoly. I am the only one who is able to teach. Teacher and teaching, these are not really synonyms. We cannot monopolize teaching because teaching happens everywhere. Teaching starts right from our home, from our mother, from our society. Everywhere teaching is happening. Students is learning from anywhere. And it is more authoritative. Teaching becomes authoritative. I am your teacher. I am telling you what to do. I am giving you syllabus. You follow my questions. You follow my answers. And I will evaluate you based on how best you can answers what I have given. So this gives rise to unnecessary that rote learning process, memory-based reproduction, or many people call it as vomiting. They vomit what they have. This is not, learning is entirely different. So we must shift focus from teaching to learning. When we say learning, student becomes center point. And that's what is the today's topic. Student becomes center point because learning is flexible. I should have freedom as a student to learn what I want to learn. It should be playful. I should enjoy doing it, It should be active. It should be voluntary. I should have right to decide, It should be multidirectional. Only classroom should not be treated as a place to learn, because I can learn from many places. It should be dialogue driven. Teachers should have a big heart to listen to me as a student. They should try to learn from students also. Dialogue driven. Upanishads are dialogue driven. Interactive. The interaction is very, very important part of learning. Learning together. This is extremely important. And the idea of university, what we talk about, universities are temples of knowledge where ideas, innovations, and skills are nurtured. Universities are seats of scholarships, statesmanship, and universal brotherhood. And they award academic degrees in various disciplines. But that is one ultimate part. The universities are not to be reduced in this process to degree mills or to degree factories, which are merely focused on jobs and career. Jobs and careers should evolve. Education must be holistic to inculcate the knowledge and skills necessary to shape individual personality and develop mental capacities and universal values in addition to making the career. And university education will have to be continuously innovate to address the changing needs of humanity, civil society, and not just markets. University education cannot think that we are only to provide what markets need. No, that is a part of the game. We should not limit only to that. And that's what NEP 2020 has given a big vision. The future education will require entirely different knowledge and skill sets to develop students as global citizens. And role of a teacher may have to change because we are witnessing now automation, the smarter social robots are coming up, the artificial intelligence, machine learning, cybernetics and robotics is coming up, So because of all this, the role of teacher is going to be changed in future, and we must get prepared for this purpose. I feel that the pedagogy, which was part of Bharatiya Shiksha Parampara, I like that, and I have known Bloom's taxonomy well, but when I looked at this Bharatiya Vichardhara pedagogy, Shiksha Pranali, I think that was much more profound. It not only captured what Bloom was talking about, but it encompassed all this what Bloom tried to do. And there are only 4 components of it. Adidhi, information and theory gathering information. This can be attempted by students, but today Adidhi component can be completely outsourced to self-study modules, including various kinds of MOOCs. You don't need teacher to go inside the classroom and with the PowerPoint and reading different texts, try to give information. Now, today's students are much smarter than us. They can get information much faster and much better than what we can give it to them. So for giving information, I think teacher has no role now. But teacher has role in next, Bodha, Aditi, Bodha, Acharana, and Pracharana. So Bodha, understanding and analysis, here teacher's role becomes very important because robots cannot give you the insights. Teacher must be there to sit with the students and get this. Then once you get this Aditya and Bodha, then Acharana, performance and practice. Using acquired knowledge, testing principles, experimenting, practicing, this can involve intense interaction between students and teachers. And then Pracharana, propagation and preaching, internship, apprenticeship, community-based learning, seminars, presentation, all this should part. Now, Pracharana, now UGC has come out with a new regulation, in which 1 year internship for BA, BSc, BCom student is given now. Not just temporary or during holidays you go and work there. No, this is apprenticeship, 1 year apprenticeship, which industries also have welcomed. So, in short, the role of the teacher from information giving, which is essentially Adhyapaka, we should try to raise it to the next level by giving knowledge and information to make us Upadhyaya. We should still try to get higher to become Acharya, who can give information, knowledge, and skills also, and still rise above to become Pandit, who can give insights. If we have still capability, one can be Drashta, who can give vision, and ultimately we should try to become Guru. It is very difficult. Nowadays, we don't see any gurus. Gurus are those who can awaken wisdom. And this awakening of the Shishya, that is the inspiring students, I think it's one of the most important role of the teacher. Future pedagogy is going to be the blended pedagogy. As I told you, we saw the first generation education was postal communication based, then it was mass media, television, radio based, then satellite television came, and then computers came in and conferencing came in. And because of this COVID, now we are so much used to webinars. A couple of months back, in 2019 and early 2020, webinar we may have heard, but we never did that. But the way in which teachers adopted this, I must compliment teachers and students, because students have grown with technology, they know this, but teachers also adopted this very, very efficiently. In many colleges, small colleges, teachers did so much of hard work to learn this technology and started offering online classes and all that. So in India, relatively, the education system have less suffered. Definitely, we have suffered to a great extent, but still because of the teachers' enthusiasm to learn more technology and adopt it, it was possible. Future teachers will have to work with robots. The maximized power of digital technologies, MOOCs, animated laboratories, and personalized data from interconnected world. The classrooms of the future will possibly feature social robots. We have our own Asimo and Maitra. Robots are already there, but they can assist teachers. They can assist teachers, or they can enhance capabilities of teachers. They can never replace teachers. Already artificial intelligence-based voice-assisted devices such as Siri of Apple, Alexa of Amazon, chat box like Alexa, or humanoid robots like Asimo, Sophia, or our own Indian Maitra, they are already in action. And Microsoft's recent AI-based hologram technology can immensely help to remove language barriers. Today, removing language barrier has become very easy because of the technology. You can see the Google translation, how efficiently they can do it. And Microsoft Holograph, HoloLens, augmented reality, all these are coming, and we can't turn blind eye to all this, what is happening around us. When I say that we must have pride and our own culture and history, Gurukul cannot go back to forest build some ashram and learn there. It cannot happen, you know. We have to create new gurukuls in our own urban environments or rural environments using the technologies we have around us. So finally, I will come to the student-centric system. Student-centric system, NEP 2020, which are the important points which they are talking about? Look at this. Multidisciplinary is one keyword which has been powerfully placed by NEP 2020. They are also talking about problem-based learning. NEP is also talking about flipped classroom. This will actually dwindle monopoly of the teacher to teach inside the classroom, because students also can teach now with the flipped classroom model. Then embedded internship, which I talked about, you know, which already the UGC has rolled them, you know. The multiple entry, multiple exit, MEME, you know, MIMI, which is one of the very important component of student-centric education system, that also NEP 2020 has recommended. Then flexible approach, you know, students should be free to choose what they want to learn. Today, what we are doing, just imagine, when somebody is passing 12th standard and coming to your college, you are giving prospectus. Mostly you are selling prospectus, you know. So after I get prospectus as a student, I have to decide that whatever courses are listed in the prospectus, I have to choose. Once I choose the course, you will give me admission to XYZ course. No, you will give me the syllabus. Now, once I get a syllabus, based on syllabus, teachers will teach. While doing that, I will also get in the course of time question bank, you know, question bank. Then I will also get model answers. And then my evaluation will be based on how best I'm reproducing the model answer. This is the current model. Where is the choice to student? Are we giving any choice to student? Are we giving any freedom to choose to student? No, today's system is not giving anything. So this NEP 2020 has opened up this opportunity to learn anything, anywhere, anytime. And to make this possible, Academic Bank of Credit, already our Prime Minister has announced, you know, just last month, UGC has come out with a regulation on Academic Bank of Credit. And this Academic Bank of Credit is going to be a disruptive innovation in which students can earn credit from anywhere, not necessarily from the college where she or he has taken admission, but from anywhere. And any time during vacation also, students can start getting credits. And credits not only of the courses which University XYZ is offering, but any credit from anywhere. For example, and I know many girl students I've seen, you know, they spend so much of time, their parents take so much of effort in teaching her Arangetram. I'm just getting an example, you know, Bharatnatyam or Kathak or whatever, you know, they spend so much of time, you know. We don't give them any credit, but this in new system, that creditization is possible, you know? And that because getting Arangetram is not easy. Those gurus are very, very strict. They're much stricter than even college professors, you know. Gurus will never allow a weak student who is not excelled to her or his expectation getting Arangetram. It is not possible. And Arangetram is open defense like thing, you know. They're performing in front of hundreds of people, you know. So small mistake people can make out. So I'm just giving you one example. There are thousands of such things, you know, imaginative things which can be done, wherein Academic Bank of Credit can be useful. You know, I can take some questions on this later. But in short, I want to tell you that, and I remember what Alvin Toffler, a great futurologist, talked about in his famous book, Future Shock. He says, and I quote, "The literates of 21st century will not be those who do not know how to read and write, but those who do not know how to learn, unlearn, and relearn." And 21st century skills are multidimensional. You must have disciplinary knowledge, you must have critical thinking capability, you must have problem solving capability, you must have analytical reasoning, you must have research-based skills, thinking like mathematician, thinking like biologist, thinking like physicist. You don't have to be physicist, mathematician, or biologist for thinking like them. So learning thinking is extremely important component of education. Scientific reasoning, you know, reflective thinking, information and digital literacy, self-directed learning, multicultural competences. These are all 21st century skills which every student, irrespective of branch, must acquire. And then I also remember Charles Darwin. I'm a biologist, and he said, it is not the strongest, it is not the smartest, but it is the most adaptable and resilient of the species that survive and prevail in the long run. We must change. We must be open to change. Otherwise, again, I remember Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker, a great management guru, in 1998, he said, 30 years from now, the big university campuses will be relics. Universities won't survive. It is as large a change as when we first got to see printed book. Now, it is up to us whether to make Peter Drucker quote true or false. I think we can make Peter Drucker prediction false if we change and if we adopt in time, because world is changing. Science and technology, ecosystem, economy, society, humanity, everything is changing. India or Bharat became independent in 1947, but its history, culture, and science extend back to thousands of years, much before antiquity. Learning from evolving tradition can help us to reimagine and remodel our new universities for Naya Bharat. This is the message which our Prime Minister is also giving, and this is the message which New Education Policy 2020 is also giving. The reimagining Indian university does not mean discarding or replacing the existing system with Indian knowledge system. Please don't say that, that we'll forget about everything and we'll bring back only Indian knowledge system or Bharatiya Gyan Parampara. Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, part of that is Shashwat, but part of that is also dynamic. So that dynamic part has to change in line with changes happening in science and technology. So with this spirit, if we move forward and make our system more student-centric, I think the choice-based credit system, the idea of choice-based credit system will be possible. Otherwise, choice-based credit system that see in choice-based credit system should be remembered, it should be for choice and not for compulsion. Today, choice-based credit system that see many times is compulsion. Students have no choice in choice-based credit system, but this is changing rapidly. I have seen many universities have started actually effectively implementing choice-based credit system. They have also started effectively implementing the multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach within their universities. And I have seen many teachers are rapidly changing to meet the future needs. And I have seen several thousands, millions of young students who are aspiring to shape their careers are not restricting their careers only in this country, but they are looking at shaping their minds and shaping their careers as global citizens. And therefore, towards sustainable development is extremely important. Towards sustainable development, why I'm saying important? Because unless we are able to learn and live with the nature, the future is going to be extremely difficult. So that component, the sensitivities towards ecosystem, towards people, to our environment is also important. And whether we talk about Industry Revolution 4 or now we are talking about Industry Revolution 5 also, whatever we may say, the educational revolution we must not forget. And the societal revolution also should be connected with that. So with this, I would stop here now by thanking all of you, and especially the all volunteers of Disha Bharat, and those who conceived idea of Disha Bharat for using Bharat and Disha for giving new direction from vision to action. My best compliments to all of you. And whenever my services are required for this mission, I'll always be available. I also would like to thank Aniruddhaji Deshpande, who is also my mentor, who kindly recommended my name, and I hope I have done something to meet the expectations. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you so much, sir. It was such a wonderful thought process and deliberations over the last 1 hour. In fact, time just flew by, and we were so engrossed in the kind of thought processes that you brought about. Just to catch a few glimpses of what we have heard from you about the blend of modern and ancient cultures to make learning more meaningful, not to make education myopic, the Srama Pratishta, then India has not evolved as Bharat, and we need to have a deep-rooted pride in history, our deeds, culture, and the focus on social and spiritual values, quality of education, the various other attributes of an educated person. And I really like the concept of changing the focus from campus-driven based, salary package-driven education to a new regimen of learning, and avoiding the concept of self-pride and past glory, the revitalization of the old colors as a part of skills, and the Indian Ayurveda, which has advocated 4 levels of teaching, which is very equivalent or better than the Bloom's taxonomy in terms of the Aditi, the Bodha, Acharana, and Pracharana. Beautiful thought process. I'm sure all our teachers have a great learning thought to take it back. And of course, new trends to embrace in terms of the robotics, technology, flipped classrooms, flexibility for students, the multiple entry and multiple exit options, and blended classrooms. So thank you so much. It was wonderful, and we take back a lot of good things to ensure that we take it back to our colleges and classrooms to make learning more meaningful to everybody.
Thank you, Bhavna ji. You captured that essence so well, really well. Thank you.
Thank you. With your permission, may I seek a few answers from you? We have a lot of questions which have come during the registration itself, and a few more on the chat box. With your permission, may I ask you?
Yes, please. Yes.
So on their behalf, I take this opportunity to ask you a few questions. The first question is that CBCS provides the platform required for interdisciplinary learning. How should the institutions and teachers prepare themselves to encourage this new style of learning among the students? And what is the change in mindset that is needed?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. I will try to address it. See, mindset change has to happen from both the sides. Mindset change, I think, first onus of mindset change we should take on us as teachers, I'm telling you. Because as I mentioned, teachers should not look at teaching as monopoly. And I can tell you that while at UGC, we try to develop one more program, which is called as Semester Outreach Program. And somehow before I left UGC, I could not complete it. Like I could complete ABC, but I could not complete this. But this is extremely important. And why I'm giving this example as one example of mindset change. We said that one semester, let the student go out of our college. Most of the Western universities practice this, They call it as study abroad program. They send American students send students to Europe or to India also sometimes, to China, to many other countries. Once full semester, they go out and take credit course there, different kind of, and they actually get first-hand experience of different cultures. But in India, some student from Darbhanga going to maybe some small town in Kerala, it's study abroad. If somebody from Bangalore goes to somewhere in Gujarat, that also is study abroad kind of a thing, And not only that, we said that students should actually go and stay not only in industry, but they should go and stay with people, with farmers. We created one scheme wherein students are expected to go and live with farmers in villages, because this kind of urban-rural divide which we face in India, can be dissolved only when students' movement happen. Now imagine if a student from JNU goes to Marathwada, which is a drought-prone region in Maharashtra, where farmers are committing suicide. If that student spends, forget about one semester, even that student spends 1 month in that village, I can tell you that student will transform entirely for whole life. I can tell you with guarantee that student, if that student go back to JNU, they will never get indulged in antisocial elements, or they will never get involved in anti-national. Never do that. Because they will see what is Bharat, what is true Bharat. They will see what are the agonies of these people who are living in our Bharat. We are so comfortable in staying in hostel, getting all subsidized food and everything. But look at the agonies of people. They are people. They are your own country people. So the moment this transformation happens during the student's age, and then if the student is from economy, any student can contribute, I think, to people, and people also can in return teach those students. And I'll give you an example again for this, taking the same semester outreach program. So imagine a student going from urban area to a farmer. In that village, if the student is economic student, they can help farmers or village Gram Panchayat to create their own budgets or to give them more economic insights or something of that kind. Farmers in return can teach those students what are these plants around. They have so much of knowledge of nature. They can tell them which are these different kinds of insects, what do they do, and it will be such a pleasure to watch different birds and different animals in the wild there. So this learning, that student would have never be able to do it in their urban environments. And at the same time, the expertise of a biotechnology student, for example, biotechnology student can help those farmers to improve their yields. They can tell them how to treat with this different kind of pesticides and use of them. All that can happen. So this kind of students' interactions with the community. But for that purpose, unless we as a teacher change our mindset and recognize that what happens outside the classroom or outside our colleges or universities also can be considered as academics. Today, we are not ready to consider that. Today, we are only considering what is academic is what I teach inside the classroom. I think that is wrong. That is incorrect now in today's environment. So if that student can gain straight experiences and insights from people, from society, from communities, we should respect equally that as academic. If somebody is excellent, who is excellent mochi or excellent tailor or excellent driver, we should give that person equal respect what we give to a graduate. Graduate who is passing out from a college with BA in English, who is not even able to speak or write few sentences in English, that driver who is driving Uber very skillfully and efficiently, why we are undermining them? Shrama Pratishtha, what I talked about, extremely important. Unless we bring in this and unless we remove this pseudo glory to so-called that degree, which is gift of the colonial mindset, unless we come out of that, this change is very difficult.
Thank you, sir. A very well thought out answer. I'm sure the query has been answered well. I have another question for you. How can CBCS be implemented in a small college offering a limited number of courses? I think most of the teachers are worried about how multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary courses can be successfully driven in a small college, which probably focuses on 1 or 2 programs. Over to you, sir.
No, I think actually if we are able to implement this choice-based credit system and academic credit bank well, the teachers may have even more time to do something for themselves. Today, the time which we are spending inside the classroom to teach them, if we are able to create wonderful MOOCs and students can learn whatever is information based, that can save over time. The choice-based credit system in small colleges, now UGC has come out with a regulation wherein we are saying that 40% of the credits students can earn online or through other modes, So those 40% of the credits students can take from other colleges also, not necessarily from your colleges. For example, some students in a small college wants to excel in his or her English communication. And in that college, there is no such facility of professional English communication course, or somebody wants to learn more about environment, and in that college that is not available, or any subject, So that student can take either online courses, or that student can actually take such courses where from a bigger college or from a university where those subjects are available. So now this barrier or this limitation earlier used to be there, that just because those courses are not available in a particular college, student is not able to take. This is going now because of the new education policy, and students will have free hand. Now imagine the small college teachers, if 40% of the credit students are taking from outside your colleges, that 40% of your time is saved. That 40% of your time you can use it for enriching your own knowledge, for doing research, for doing something else, or for doing something for the society. So all this is possible, and this kind of a choice-based credit system coupled with academic bank of credit will open up all these new avenues.
So true, sir. I have the third question. May I take it with your permission?
Yes, please.
Yeah. One of the faculty has asked, how do you think we should help the students through a counseling to make the right choices of interdisciplinary courses? Because students are also as new to this concept as the teachers are. So how do you think the students should be counseled so that they make the right choices?
I think there is no straightforward answer to this, because it will depend on the situation there. But continuous interaction on one side with the student and on other side with the society is important for a teacher. Because interacting with the society, teacher will understand what society is needing, or what industries are needing, or what markets are needing. And once the understanding comes in, then interacting with the students, that kind of information becomes useful. And then accordingly, teacher can do better counseling to the students based on that student's background, that student's interest, that student's capabilities, everything, what will be the better option for that student, this kind of a counseling. But at the same time, I must tell you that students should not depend completely only on teachers to get counseled, because today's students, I think that today's students are definitely smarter than us, so we should not think that we are the only ones who can give them this kind of information or counseling. They are able to really find their own counselors and peers. Students can learn from each other very well, and they can decide what we should do, what they want, what they like, what they aspire. We should try to see how they can get it in the best of the best manner and the best of the best quality. That as a teacher, we should take effort.
Absolutely, sir. I go to the next question. One of the faculty members has asked, how does the ABC mentioned in the NEP 2020 be incorporated in the CBCS curriculum model?
Actually, it is connected. You need not incorporate, it is connected. You look at the new regulation of ABC, which were released last month, and you will see that the descriptions are given. Regulations are there now, So regulations allow students to earn credits, deposit credits, redeem credits, either for certificate, for diploma, for degree, or whatever you want to say that. And choice-based credit system is, because they are linked, they are not separate, because choice-based credit system cannot be effectively implemented without ABC, because ABC is the implementing machinery of choice-based credit system.
Thank you, sir. I have another question. The question is, in the present curriculum, we do have some skill-based components, and with the introduction of CBCS, how should the skill enhancement courses be framed to make students more employable?
See, as I told you, again, employability will depend on which discipline you are in. But because of this embedded internship, or embedded apprenticeship, BA BSc students, BA BSc BCom students are able to spend 1 year outside their colleges, right, with their potential employers. And 1 year is a very, very reasonable time. During this period, if they perform well, employer obviously want good people, so they will be retained. So this is an excellent opportunity which will increase employability, and on-site learning also will happen, because today most of the industries complain that we don't get ready-made stuff, because whatever graduates we are getting, we have to spend a lot of time in teaching them skills which we require. So this gap can be bridged to some extent, at least, because of this 1 year embedded internship, which will definitely help acquiring required skills and also improve employability.
Thank you, sir. Can we take 1 or 2 more questions?
Yes, please. We are in good time, so there's no problem.
Yes. So one of the question is, implementation of NEP seems challenging. Could you please provide a few headings under which institutions should work to successfully implement NEP?
See, NEP is a very large document, and there are several pointers NEP has given. And it is not possible to implement NEP in one go. So we'll have to go stepwise. So I would say that some part of NEP, and I'm telling you, even without waiting for formal approval of the NEP by the government, and therefore at state level, Karnataka government has taken the right decision that without even waiting for central government to approve, formally approve NEP, the implementation plan is being prepared. That's the right way to do it. Colleges also, at college level, certain components of NEP can be implemented. At university level, certain components of NEP can be implemented. At state level, certain NEP certain components may not be able to, you may not be able to implement unless the central regulatory framework is changed. But as we start walking ahead, then by the time we reach to that, I think the necessary regulatory reforms also should be in place. So this will happen in a stepwise manner over a period of times. By 2030, they're saying that the fairly good portion of NEP can be implemented. It may take even longer time for some recommendations to implement.
That's true. One question. In fact, one gentleman with the name of Yoga Samskritam has asked a couple of questions and put forth a lot of his thought processes, which is definitely worth the debate, though I don't have the time to take up all of it. A glimpse of one of the questions that he has asked is, nation with 2 names, a historic, spiritual, cultural name as Bharat, that now carries a foreigner provided identity linked to a river Indus. What should be the appropriate narrative? India that was Bharat, or India that strives to become Bharat? Monocultural dominance in education. So I request you to please throw some light.
No, I completely agree with that comment, because I have not seen any other country which has such 2 names. Pakistan is Pakistan. Bangladesh is Bangladesh, Sri Lanka is Sri Lanka, America is America. Why only India is Bharat or Bharat is India? Actually, Bharat should be Bharat.
So true. So true, sir. In fact, sir has a lot of other thought processes, which is very, very enticing and definitely could engage into more meaningful discussions. With this, I think we have answered most of the queries, and we have a lot of congratulatory and thank you messages for you at the chat box from several faculty members. We are sincerely thankful to you, sir.
Thank you.
You have really brought out the best.
It was a pleasure to be with all of you, and my very best wishes to entire Disha team. And I could see that more than 110 participants have joined from different places. So thank you all of you for patient hearing, and also a lot of comments I can see on the chat box, and your interesting questions. I also enjoyed this interaction. So,
over to Ms. Lavanya for the concluding remarks. Do you have?
Thank you very much, ma'am. I take this immense privilege of rendering vote of thanks for today. Today has indeed been a milestone in Disha Bharat's journey in contemplating on national education policy. Dr. Bhushan sir's immense knowledge and insightful words surely inspired us all. Sir, your thoughts resonated with our thoughts, the thoughts of all of us in Disha Bharat, and your words have added strength and conviction in the direction which we are heading as well, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for gracing our platform, sir. We please accept our heartfelt gratitude. We hope to interact and learn from you in days to come as well, sir. Dhanyawad, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Bhavani ma'am for moderating the session so flawlessly, and also for sharing sir's summary, his speech summary in such a beautiful way. Thank you so much, ma'am. Dhanyawad. Dear participants, we have some important information to share. So, as I told you all, today's session was a milestone. We are standing very close towards the threshold of completing this national education policy national webinar that we have been conducting from past 10 months. So, to commemorate this, we have organized a small informal discussion. We will be getting together. We have conducted 10 events so far. More than 20 speakers have taken part, and more than 10,000 participants have been a part of Vikasana journey so far. So there is one informal discussion that we have organized based on ongoing national webinar series on national education policy. It is going to be on 4th of September, Saturday, 3 o'clock to 4:30 p.m. in the conference hall, Karnataka State Higher Education Council, Ramachandra Road, Gandhinagar, Bengaluru. Please do take down our numbers. It is listed on that particular poster. We will be very happy if you all could join, especially those who are in Karnataka. Please do bear in mind that we will be keeping all the COVID-related regulations in mind. If at all you could make it, it would make us very happy. And also, another couple of set of information that I wanted to share with you all is, Bhavana ma'am will be circulating the feedback form link. Please do submit the feedback form. Only those who have submitted feedback form will be getting their certificates. We shall be cross-checking it with the Zoom report and then sending you the certificates as well. And another set of information is that we have a group dedicated for the NEP teachers who are keen about understanding more on NEP. I'll be sending you the WhatsApp group link. Please do join the group. You will be along with information regarding our programs around NEP. We shall also be sharing our thoughts for the day, our Panchangam, and other beautiful content that we are creating exclusively for the youth of this country. Many people are benefiting through this content. Please do share it with your team as well, your family and friends. Many are benefiting a lot. Please do consider joining this particular group. Thank you so much for participating and being there with us all. Namaste.